Welcome to People Who Perform, the Real Estate Careers Podcast. Each episode will bring you conversations from business leaders and up-and-coming stars in the commercial real estate industry in Canada. Our guests will share their unique career journeys, passions, and advice on what it takes to be successful in this industry. This podcast is brought to you by Highview Partners, connecting people who perform in Canadian real estate.
I'm your host, Nicola Denning-Millar, and today I'm pleased to connect you with Farrah Khimji. Farrah is the founder of Futura Funds and works with technology startups and corporate clients to develop strategies and best practices on how to best integrate technology and innovation into the commercial real estate industry. She leverages over 15 years of finance, accounting and advisory experience where she's helped business owners in the real estate industry make strategic financial decisions to reach their company goals. Farrah has worked for both a large property owner, manager and developer, as well as a private equity fund. Entities that were both invested in commercial real estate and development assets in Canada and around the world. She has a degree in commerce from McMaster University, an MBA from Wilfrid Laurier University, and also holds her CPA designation. She currently serves as the president for Toronto CRE, is treasurer for NAIOP, and is a member of REALPAC's Diversity and Inclusion Committee. So good morning, Farrah, and thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing well, and thank you very much for having me here today.
Oh my gosh, it's absolutely our pleasure. We're thrilled that you've decided to join us as a guest. I think you've got a great story, Farrah, and it's going to be very inspiring to our listeners. Well, let's get this conversation going, Farrah, as I'm keen to hear what you have to say. So perhaps you can start by sharing with us how you got your start inside of our industry.
Sure. So in university, I studied business with a focus on accounting, and that led me to start my career at PwC and pursue a chartered accountant designation. And at the tail end of my time at PwC, most of my clients were real estate clients, so RioCan and First Capital Realty. And that was really my first brush with the industry. And when I decided I wanted to leave public practice and go into the industry, and with a bit of the real estate experience that I had from PwC, a recruiter approached me about a role with Oxford Properties, and I decided to go for it. So I stepped into a role of managing a team of 5 staff and a portfolio of 2.5 million square feet and about 2 billion of assets under management, including Class A office, retail shopping centers, and residential. So Oxford was a really great place to start my career, get exposure to all asset classes, and really learn from some of the best in the business.
Fantastic. And that's a very different environment, isn't it? Going from public practice straight into industry.
For sure. It definitely took me a little bit of adjustment. It's just even the hours, the structure, and kind of going from a more non-routine environment at PwC to a more routine environment took a bit of time to adjust.
And when you transitioned into real estate, did it immediately feel like the right move?
It took me a little bit of time. I think when I started getting more involved in the industry, that's when I knew I was in the right place. And when I started meeting people outside of Oxford as well, and outside of the accounting department at Oxford, that's when I started to realize, okay, this industry is for me.
When you look back on those early years, what advice did you receive that you feel has created a lasting impact on your career path so far?
Sure. Early in my career, I was told by a senior executive that you should dress for the job or role that you want and not the job that you have. And this really stuck with me in some ways. It's kind of similar to the imposter syndrome or the fake it until you make it idea. But for me, what it meant was that I was always striving to achieve, to be better, and to extend myself outside my regular comfort zone. I think it has also meant I am constantly trying to learn and grow as a leader and to stretch myself beyond what I think is possible. So this is really a piece of advice that I've kept with me throughout my career and even now.
That's great. So you must have spent a lot of money back in those days on some pretty cool, cute suits.
I had a few power suits in my early 20s and definitely looked a little bit more grown up than I needed to at that time. But yeah.
So your career trajectory changed in 2019. So what prompted the decision to leave a more traditional role within real estate to become an entrepreneur?
So it was definitely an evolution. I have always been more of I've kind of always had more of an entrepreneurial mindset. And years ago, I actually thought of going into event planning or opening my own restaurant, if you can believe that. But those ideas always seemed like more of sort of a pipe dream or something to really aspire to way down the road. Or, I'd have to wait until I had enough money or experience to start my own business. And then after working for about 15 years now in a corporate setting, I kind of realized that, waiting for that perfect moment when all of the stars would align would likely not come. Or if it did, or when it did, I might not have the energy or the lifestyle to actually pursue it. And so I felt like if I was going to be true to myself, and I really believed I, was an entrepreneur, or could be an entrepreneur, that it was time to start following that passion and calling now. And so I was also motivated because at the same time as I was, starting to have this thinking, a year prior to that, my sister actually made the leap and stepped out into the world of entrepreneurship after a career as an intellectual property lawyer. Launched her own consultancy firm working with governments and educational institutions globally. So I really saw her example of sort of charting your own course, working on interesting projects, and thought, she's ultimately her own boss. And I found that really attractive. So I just decided to take the leap.
A little sibling rivalry. I love it. So how did you decide then exactly what you were going to specialize in?
Yeah. So you know what? I really took some time to understand what it was that I enjoyed most about my career at that point. And also, what was I good at and what I knew I could potentially be passionate about for years to come. So I knew that I liked working in the industry in commercial real estate and that I really loved connecting with people and also trying to connect people in unseemly ways. And so at that time, while I was kind of going through that thinking, I was also gaining a newfound interest in technology and specifically its role in innovating and reimagining real estate. So I started to connect with a few founders of technology companies whose technology had specific application to real estate and realized that there was an opportunity to then connect those founders and be sort of the conduit to bring innovation into the real estate industry. And that's kind of where Futura Funds was born. And I took all of the elements of my experience, interest, and my passion and just realized I can do what I love in an industry that I love and kind of work to bring that innovation and collide those two worlds together, real estate and tech. And now, I've been at it for about 8 months. And given the current landscape right now in COVID-19, Futura Funds is actually set up well to do this. And technology and innovation really have become at kind of forefront and top of mind for senior executive teams. And I've been able to kind of ramp up my business activity to partner with landlords and asset managers as they navigate through these challenging times. So starting this year, I've also partnered with my sister and another partner in the medical space to bring technology solutions with sort of a health lens in mind to the industry. So it's been a very interesting time in kind of starting and evolving this business.
And I know that from conversations that you and I have had in the past, that we share that experience of stepping out of your comfort zone because we set up our own businesses, and that it's really scary and is often fueled by fears that you have to really dig deep to overcome. I've actually been listening to Brene Brown's new podcast series called Unlocking Us. and she details her strategy for what she describes as an FFT. And I'm not going to curse on this podcast, but let's just say that it stands for flipping at first time, and just how important it is to stay in tough situations rather than give up, even though you might feel awkward and vulnerable and scared of failing. And so I often tell people that even though it's scary to put yourself out there, it can be even scarier to stay where you are.
Agreed. I mean, I think it's called a comfort zone for a reason. It's cushy in there, but it's not necessarily the right platform for growth or innovation or thinking outside the box or really, trying to learn and extend yourself. So, we have to constantly challenge ourselves to step out of that cushy place so that we can really, evolve as a person. And so for me, every time I've stepped out of my comfort zone, it becomes less scary to do it each time because you flex that muscle and it starts to come a bit more natural to kind of do that each time. But the first time is definitely the scariest, especially depending on, what comfort zone you're stepping out of or into. And so, yeah, it's taken a bit of practice, but for me, every time I have stepped out of my comfort zone, that's really when I've truly felt like I've been living and felt so alive. So it's quite exciting, actually.
Yeah, I felt exactly the same way when I was thinking of going it alone. I'd been in my comfort zone for far too long, and I just wasn't pushing myself or taking any professional risks. But the moment I did, success felt so much more satisfying because I knew I'd earned it. And so, as the saying goes, nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
So in terms of what you learned while you were working in commercial real estate, what skills do you still apply now that you're on your own?
Sure. So, what I could say is maybe not necessarily a skill, but something that I've learned that has stuck with me throughout is, at one of the previous companies I worked with, I learned the importance of partnerships and working with partners where values and expectations are aligned. And I learned this in both a negative and positive way, in the sense that partnerships where there was not alignment from the start, even if the terms or financial outcomes seemed lucrative or favorable, ultimately did not result in a successful outcome for the long term and caused friction throughout. But when there was alignment of vision and shared goals, the working relationship is a lot smoother and results in a better outcome for all parties. And this is something I have carried into my own business and that I take into consideration in every partnership and even client I work with. Ultimately, real estate is as much of a people business as it is about the real estate. So working with people that you get along with and respect is very important.
So in terms of some of the biggest challenges that you've had to overcome, would you mind sharing some of those?
Sure. Well, starting my own business has been the ultimate challenge. I am almost coming up on a year, and I can say I have had a lot of fun on this journey, but I have been stretched in ways I couldn't anticipate. First off, I think my projection of timelines was potentially skewed in terms of thinking things would happen sooner than they would. Every activity in my business has taken a lot longer to build out, to think about, to anticipate, to not necessarily even understand all of the issues that might arise along the way. So I think my vision and idea of what and how quickly this would scale and grow has changed. Also, I think you often look at that vision as a linear path, and I've learned that it is not linear. It's kind of jagged, and I'm just pivoting. Yes, it's moving in a certain direction, but there are pivots along the way. And it's really taught me to be nimble. And I think this is the beauty of being an entrepreneur, is that you can be agile, you can adapt, you can think differently, to not be so rigid in how you think and work. Being an accountant by trade, that's not something that necessarily always came naturally to me. So I've had to be a little bit more flexible in how I work. And it's been challenging, but it's also meant it's been very exciting.
I completely agree with you. I think at the preliminary stage of setting up your own business, you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And then very quickly, you become very aware of what you don't know, all of the things that you didn't anticipate. So, a lot of it is you have to fly by the seat of your pants, and you have to be agile. You have to think on your feet and be creative. And that can be a challenge when you're also trying to do the work.
And there's a lot of things that you just don't think about that are in the periphery. So you kind of get focused on the business, but even just setting up a website or, doing marketing and doing outreach. And there's just so many aspects that go into starting a business that while you can anticipate a lot of them, you can't anticipate all of them.
No. And I've realized actually that there is a huge difference between working in the business where you're doing the part of the job that you love and that you're passionate about. And obviously for us, it's the recruitment side and connecting great people. But then there is the working on the business and doing all the things that you've just described that go into starting the business and operating a business. And for me, it's that part that doesn't come as naturally. So yeah, I hear you. So at this stage of your career, what are you crediting your success to?
I would say that I credit my success to a few things. One being the educational path that I decided to take. In my undergrad, I decided to go into accounting, get my chartered accountant designation. And then later in my career, I also decided to do my MBA. And I did this part-time while working full-time at Oxford. I did this primarily because I wanted to become a more well-rounded business professional and not feel or become too pigeonholed in an accounting capacity. I do feel getting my MBA helped me to achieve this, and I was able to move into a more strategic finance role when I graduated. I would also say that I'm a very curious person and I love connecting with and meeting new people. So upon entering the industry, I joined a few networking organizations early in my career, such as NAIOP, Toronto CRE, and ULI. And early on, I got involved by volunteering on various committees, and I started to grow my professional network. I got engaged in the industry, trying to learn and absorb as much information as I could outside of the companies that I was working for during that time. And I would say that it has been a building of a strong network that has really helped me in my career and has been a big reason that I've had the confidence and ability to start my own business. I also sought to seek out mentors and had some good mentors along the way, or if they weren't formal mentors, there were also just people who inspired me, and I looked at their path, their trajectory, and their leadership qualities, and I looked to follow in their footsteps. I always just sought to surround myself with bright, positive, and driven people. And then lastly, I would say my parents, my ultimate cheerleaders and supporters, are the main drivers of my success. Throughout my life, they have provided me every opportunity to succeed, from the best education and the never-ending support and encouragement to follow my dreams and to never give up. There is absolutely no way I would be where I am today without them.
Would you like to join a community dedicated to empowering women to excel, influence, and lead throughout their commercial real estate careers? At Highview Partners, we are proud sponsors of Toronto CRE, part of the global CRE network. Their members are key decision makers of some of the most influential corporations in Canada. With their quality programming, events, and professional networking, Toronto CRE is a great place to grow your career and gain support from your peers. To learn more about the organisation and how you can become a member, visit torontocrew.org.
In terms of your passions, and I know that you feel very passionate about a number of different things, but if you had to highlight a couple of things that get you excited and motivate you every single day, what would you say that was, Farrah?
Yeah, I feel very passionate about empowering women and minorities. This passion stems, one, from being a woman and visible minority myself, and learning from the challenges that presented me with from a young age throughout my career and even now. With time, I am continuously learning to overcome those challenges and address those challenges. And I'm passionate about using my example and learnings to help others along the way. With time, I have learned that being an ethnic woman in a primarily white male-dominated industry doesn't have to be seen as a negative, that it is in fact my competitive advantage, that it can help me to stand out, and that with the confidence and platform to do so, it has become my strength and not something to shy away from. Stepping into my own skin, so to say, and embracing who I am and not seeing who I am as a barrier has really helped me in so many ways. And I'm passionate about providing platforms for others to realize the same. It is actually one of the reasons I joined Toronto CRE back in 2013, as they aim to provide this type of platform for women in the real estate industry.
And it's through TCRE that you and I met. And one of the main reasons that we became members and decided to sponsor TCRE, we were just really impressed by the knowledge and the openness and the sincerity of the members. And I love the general philosophy of empowering and helping others. I mean, there's so many great programs offered to really help women reach their potential. But I think most importantly, it offers a very safe space for members to seek advice from others and learn without that awful fear of being judged. I'm just thrilled that we're part of this group so that we can add value as well and give back. I have to congratulate you actually as well, Farrah, because you've been elected president quite recently.
Yes, I have. Thank you.
I mean, I know it's probably feeling like one of those FFT moments, as Brene Brown would say. I know that there's been some wonderful female leaders that have, been in that role before.
Mm-hmm.
But I know how passionate you are, and it seems like you've got so many great ideas to engage with the members and offer them some new and exciting initiatives. So I think it's going to be a case of watch this space.
Yes, yeah. So, it's interesting because when I first joined Toronto CRE, I really saw it as a place to meet other like-minded women in the industry, as you had shared, and come together with them and kind of feel like I had a crew, pardon the pun, but a crew to walk through those challenges I mentioned earlier together. I also really believed in its mission of empowering women to excel, influence, and lead throughout their commercial real estate careers. And mainly I saw it as a place where I could belong in an industry where at that time early in my career, I didn't really feel that I did. And now, having been with CRE over 7 years and in various capacities of leadership within the organization, as I've stepped into my term as president, I obviously I've envisioned a lot for the organization. And some of those meant, meeting in person for events. And I realized the need to quickly pivot to offering our members value and relevant content online in the interim. But my goal for CRE is, for Toronto CRE, is for it to be the destination for all women and men who support women in the industry to come together and elevate, promote, and celebrate each other. During my term, I want to focus on fostering higher engagement amongst our members, from those new to the industry and to those that have a more seasoned career. CRE is just such a unique organization that brings people from all levels and all disciplines in our industry together to share and learn from each other. And we also provide an opportunity for our members to lead and practice their leadership skills. And I know that I have personally benefited from that throughout my years as a member. And I want to ensure we hold true to providing that platform to all of our members. So I really want it to be a place also where women can transact and do business together, and that the broader industry comes to partner on initiatives that support women, diversity, and inclusivity in our industry.
Why is diversity and inclusion so integral in building high-performing teams, do you think?
First off, it is important to distinguish between the two. So diversity focuses on the makeup of your workforce, demographics such as gender, race, ethnicity, age, sexual orientation, just to name a few. And inclusion is a measure of culture that enables diversity to thrive. So it is important to have diversity on a team so that by design, you have diversity of thought. having a whole bunch of people in a room saying the same things or thinking the same way is, first of all, boring, but it doesn't foster the right environment. Yeah, and it doesn't foster the right environment for growth, innovation, and divergent thinking. And then in terms of inclusion, it is one thing to bring a whole bunch of bright and diverse people to the table, but if those people don't feel like they can bring their whole self to that table and they don't feel included, then they won't be as willing or feel free to offer up that divergent thinking. So having people feel included and welcomed in the room always allows them to offer the best of themselves. It allows them to feel free to share and to be valued for their contributions. I think it's also important to consider diversity of age and discipline when building high-performing teams. We live in a world where everything is interconnected and we can no longer work in silos. So creating teams that bring in people from all levels and across various disciplines will lend way to the 360-degree thinking that is required in today's environment.
Wonderfully put, Farrah. Thank you very much for sharing. So we're going to switch gears a little bit here.
Sure.
And, let's get to know you a little bit better.
Okay.
Who was your role model growing up? What did they teach you that you're applying today?
Sure. My role model is my mother. However, it wasn't until later in life, in my 20s, that I really appreciated and understood her story and influence in my own life. My mom came to Canada from Kenya in the late 70s, and she came here without having finished her high school education. And, she got married and started having kids. And while I was still a baby and my sister was a bit older, she decided to complete her high school education. And she did that through correspondence while we were young kids. And then upon finishing high school, she enrolled in university and started to get on the track to becoming a chiropodist, which is a foot doctor. And I remember a story that she was telling me that at one point when she was studying, I think it might have been for calculus or chemistry or something like that, and it was quite difficult, and she threw all of her books in the garbage and just sort of said, you know what, I just can't do this. I've got these young kids at home and it's too much work. And my father came home and he was the one that really encouraged her to go back to school. And he saw those books in the garbage. And I think sort of in a reverse psychology type moment said, well, okay, that's okay. All you'll ever be is a housewife. And not to say there's anything wrong in that, but for my mom, that was quite the motivation to pull those books out of the garbage and continue on her journey to the point where she now, and for the last 25 years, has been practicing as a chiropodist and runs a successful private practice. And there was a point years back where her income definitely surpassed my father's, who is now a retired engineer. And this was a woman who came to Canada without her high school education, went back and did school in her early 30s, and is really a self-made woman that has just shown me throughout my career that nobody can tell you that you can't be who or what you want to be, and that everything is possible with determination, which is something that I hold with me strongly today, especially on my journey as an entrepreneur. Whenever I have a moment of doubt or questioning whether I can do this or not, I remember my mom's story and how against all odds, she persevered. And this carries me through those difficult times.
Oh, that's wonderful. She sounds like a remarkable lady. And how lucky are you to bear witness to her overcoming those challenges and then ultimately succeeding and feeling so proud of herself. I mean, as a mum myself, I can imagine just how good she would have felt to be able to teach her kids that lesson.
Well, I think knowing that we just have one shot at this, I feel I have been given a lot of opportunity in life and a lot of fortune, and that I want to make the most of what I've been given to make a difference and to use the platform I have to help others. And this really keeps me motivated, knowing I am in a position to do good work and help others to do the same. Also, I would say I'll mention my sister again. She has been a source of inspiration throughout my life, and I've always looked up to her as someone who goes against the grain, charts her own path, and her story always motivates me to do the same.
Can you recommend any other podcasts right now that might inspire our listeners? Other than this one, of course.
Of course. Yeah. I listen to many, but my go-to most days is How I Built This with Guy Raz. It is an NPR podcast that features stories of founders that have built a lot of the products and brands that we have all come to know and love. And I'm just so fascinated to hear about the journey of fellow entrepreneurs and how they came up with their ideas, what motivated them to follow their instincts, and how they overcame challenges along the way. It's just so great to learn about the stories behind the people who have started amazing companies that I shop at and support, like Whole Foods, SoulCycle, Spanx, Swell, and so many others. So seeing as you're also fascinated in people's journeys in starting this podcast, I highly recommend it.
Sounds great. I'm always open to suggestions and ideas, and that sounds terrific. When COVID-19 is contained, soon, hopefully, what's the first thing you're going to do, Farrah?
Well, I am headed straight to my nail salon, and then I'm going to the hair salon, and that'll all be in preparation for a vacation with my girlfriends, ideally somewhere that's hot and outside of Canada.
That sounds absolutely terrific. I love it. So we're just going to wrap up here then, Farrah. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give somebody starting out in real estate?
Well, I would say it's to aim high and try not to second guess yourself too much. I did this a lot earlier on, and I questioned if I was smart enough or if I belonged or if I should say that thing I'm thinking. And when I gained the confidence to do so more often, I realized that I should have been doing that all along. It's not as scary as, you come to think, and that most people are also just trying to figure out things as they go. So I would say it would be to have confidence in yourself, as you're the only one that can do that for you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today, Farrah. It really has been such a pleasure. And I've learned a lot by listening to you today, and I'm sure that our listeners have as well. So I look forward to seeing you in that nail salon in a few months' time.
Sounds good. And thank you very much for having me and allowing me to share my story.
Thank you for listening to People Who Perform, the Real Estate Careers podcast brought to you by Highview Partners, a talent search and recruitment firm focused exclusively on Canadian real estate. If your real estate team is looking to find the best next hire, or if you're ready to make the best next move in your career, then reach out to Highview Partners today. Follow us on LinkedIn and visit us at highviewpartners.ca.